Hello everybody, this is your host Jonesy, and yes, this is a brand new podcast called The Sporting Fix. This is where you'll find the opinions, the information, the brains, and a bit of humour around sport, mainly targeted at the AFL and cricket. Throughout our time recording, you'll hear some guests specialising in certain areas of AFL teams to give their advice and opinions about the current situations happening in sport. To let you know, obviously you probably want to know who I am and a little bit about me. I'm a very passionate man about footy and cricket, and I do have quite a bit of knowledge within this area. I spend time watching every game and every round, and I guess analysing every aspect of the sport. For everyone watching, I hope you do enjoy your listen today and in the future. But we're not here to put socks on caterpillars, so let's get straight into it. So today we will be covering 4 different topics in this episode today. One of them being a wrap-up of the round. Obviously, I'll wrap up round 22 and how teams performed, etc. And then I'll also be notifying you about my tips for each round. And obviously, heading towards the pointy season, it is going to be quite a thrilling end towards the AFL. And also, who's going to make finals? This is probably the most important part of the AFL. Really, really tight this year. And I'll be very excited to cover that. And lastly, I went to a game this round, and boy, oh boy, isn't it just so good to go to a game of footy and enjoy it rather than watching it through a screen. So I'll be talking to you about going to a game and analysing different areas of the game rather than looking at it through a screen. So, well, let's get started. The wrap-up of round 22, we go to Friday night footy, 7:50 at the MCG. I was lucky enough to go to this game. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but it was Collingwood and Geelong at the G, and it was in front of 75,000 people. It was such a good game to be a part of. So loud. It's one thing to go to an AFL game, but it's another to go to a game where Collingwood are playing. The Magpie Army, they are a different breed. They go off their nut every time. Every single call the umpy says, they are just absolutely embracing, I guess you could call in the nicest way possible, the moments. But we saw Josh Dacos. I mean, I got to notify this bloke. He had his best game in his career best, 38 disposals at 82% disposal efficiency. So he got the pill a lot, and bloody oath he used it as well. Jeremy Cameron, he kicked 7 goals for. He could have easily won the game for Geelong. He had his chances, but bloody oath, his heat map, he was spending half his time 5 rows back in the pavilion stand. He spent all his time hunched in that forward pocket. There were a few controversial decisions made, whether it was in or outside the boundary, but anyway, it is what it is, and Collingwood won by 8 points, but now it's tricky. So they lose Geelong now. It makes it tricky for him to reach finals. They still are a chance, obviously, but it'll be interesting to see how they go. A few injuries to Collingwood. Darcy Moore getting taken off in that first quarter. We know now it's a bit precautionary. He won't play the rest of the home and away season, so he'll be back for finals, but they may lose their defensive structure. That was the only concern I think people had. Him obviously being out of the side, he's such a defensive beast. He's a wall back there. And without him, they may lose their defensive structure. However, they held up well. Obviously, he went out in the first quarter, so they really had to adapt to him not being there. And they did that pretty well. Obviously, versing Geelong isn't easy, and especially it makes it harder without Darcy Moore, but they did the job in the end. Collingwood, 2 games clear at top of position. They'll clearly be minor premiers at the end of the season, so that's good for them. Now we move over to North Melbourne and Essendon on Saturday afternoon. It was Cunnington's farewell, very emotional scenes for the Shinboners. How good was it to see him nail that goal from 35 and absolutely lift the roof? I feel like every Shinboner, every North Melbourne supporter, they had a tear in their eyes because it's just so good to see. The bloke, the stuff he's been through, cancer, he is just a beast. Even though they lost, he left in quite a good state, kicking 2 goals and 24 touches as well. Harry Sheezel, I want to point this bloke out. So he had 32 disposals at 94% disposal efficiency. When he has the pill, everyone is calm, right? When he has the Sharon, I don't think you should be worried. This bloke is 18 and he's demolishing the AFL right now. The way he holds himself at the back line, it is a sight to see. And him and Wardlaw link up really, really well. It's exciting times for North Melbourne. But obviously they couldn't get the win. But that's fine. Obviously they're a building club and they'll get there in the end. But as a Don's point of view, so Essendon, they just beat West Coast. They just beat North Melbourne. It's a little concerning for them to just beat these two teams heading into September. So West Coast, they're as useless as a concrete parachute, but Essendon just got over the line. So if they want to be a contender or they want to make finals, they've got to really do the job, and they've got to do the job well. They didn't do it. But 4 points is 4 points. Surely you'd imagine if they want to make finals, they have to beat the Giants this week, and they have to beat, Collingwood. Whether they will or won't, doesn't matter. They have to just show some fight. It's pretty important going to the end of the season. Sydney and Gold Coast. Sun season over now that they've lost that match, unfortunately for them. But if we look at the positives for Sydney, Chad Warner, he was a star, 28 disposals and 2 goals. Swans entered the top 8 since round 5. Can you believe that? The start of the Swans season, they were just acidic. They were seriously making the grand final the year before. It's just incredible the way that they started. They're coming back now. Ever since they versed Geelong in round 6 and got pummeled by 100-plus points, they won 2 of their last 8 games. So that was really concerning for John Longmire and the Swans people. But since then, they've really started to hit their straps. Ever since they versed West Coast and demolished them by 171 points, they seriously hit their straps. And since then, they've lost just once in their last 8 games. So they're flying under the radar. And I feel like that's good for them. So obviously they won't make the top 4, but they're starting to hit their straps. They're not losing games. If they continue to do this and they bring that into September, they may be a chance to go all the way. It's a tough decision. Most likely, obviously, we look at it now and there's a lot of competition. But if they really hit their straps, they are a tough team to beat. So it's a good win for them. They needed the win. They're hitting their straps. And for Sydney Swans supporter, hopefully they can go all the way and continue that form into finals. We now go to the Gabba in Brisbane. It was a very, very close match. Brisbane winning by 6 points in the end. But Matt Crouch, he's been left out of the side for so long. He's finally got his chance and he delivers again. 33 disposals at 88% disposal efficiency. This bloke, he just finds the pill and uses it. I mean, you start to think now, how did they not pick him? How did they not use him earlier on? You know, they have him now on the side, and Brisbane, the Gabba is their fortress. It's as simple as that. Matt Crouch delivers again. He nearly delivered them, nearly gave them single-handedly 4 points. But the Crows, they're a slight chance to make the 8 now after a few upsets during the round. It's the third time. So if you look at a positive for Adelaide, it's the third time this season the Crows have lost to a top 4 team on the road by less than a goal, right? So they don't get the win, but they are taking it up to top 4 teams away from home. You know how we spoke about, we've heard these comments about how the Crows can't play away from home. Well, they nearly beat Collingwood at the G, they nearly beat Melbourne at the G, and now they nearly beat Brisbane at the Gabba. So as a Crows supporter, I mean, that's a positive to look at, the way that the Crows are going away from home now. We know that the Adelaide Oval is their fortress. They've beaten Port Adelaide there twice, so that arena is certainly not a problem for them. This is a stat thanks to AFL Central, right? So Harris Andrews, every time he scores a goal in round 22, Brisbane are 2-0. Right, so when he scores a goal in any other round, they're 0-8. So all he needs to do is just score a goal in round 22 and they win. It's as simple as that. And he did that today, and yeah, they got the 4 points. So, I mean, Brisbane and Adelaide, such a good game. Adelaide is still a chance. We'll see how they go in the season. I feel like they deserve to make the top 8, just the way they've held themselves up this year. But we'll see how they go. We now go to Carlton and Melbourne. This was such a controversial ending. Whether it was or it wasn't touched, it doesn't matter now. Carlton, They get the 4 points, and I feel like right now they are the real deal. They have won 8 in a row. They've beaten Melbourne. They've beaten Collingwood. They've beaten Port Adelaide. I know they won't finish top 4, but boy, they are scary good. Any team that is going to verse them from here on out, they should be absolutely and bricks. And I mean, seriously, they are seriously on top of their game. They're versing Gold Coast this round in round 23, I should say, against up in the Gold Coast. So they should get the 4 points, and then they obviously verse the Giants in round 24 against at the Marvel Stadium. So you'd imagine they get they've 8 points after those 2 games. So they're currently on 50 points. So they win the last 2 games, and they're on 58 points. There's a slight chance to make the top 4. Probably not. But I don't really think it matters if they don't, because the way they're playing, they don't look like losing a game, so they can go all the way from finishing 5th and not even having that second chance. So really, really good signs from Carlton's perspective. We go to West Coast and Freo. There's not a lot to be said in this game. It was just an absolute demolition. Eagles, as I said before, they are as useless as a concrete parachute. They just don't look like getting the pill, and when they do, they just cough it up. So the Dockers kicked 17 goals in a row. Luke Jackson, I know they verse West Coast, but even without Sean Darcy, he's really standing up in the ruck. He's just dominating right now without Sean Darcy in place, and there were some questions about whether he would be performing well without Sean Darcy. But I think everyone's just been silenced by the way he's gone about things. He had 26 hit-outs, 19 disposals, and a goal last round. It was just phenomenal. But you got to admit, if you cough up 17 goals in a row, that just shows where the Eagles are at, and everyone knows it. They are... There's no word can comprehend how the Eagles are going right now. So we saw the injury to Oscar Allen. That's the last thing the Eagles need at the moment. He's their key forward. They lose another injury. I mean, you just cannot see them getting out of this mess. So they start to perform, right? They beat North Melbourne. They just beat Essendon. And then they just almost don't show up. So they lose by 100 points to Freo. They lose Oscar Allen. I mean, could things get any worse for West Coast? I don't know if they could, to be honest. Sunday football. Hawthorn and the Dogs. Hawks just continue. They are continuing to shape this 8. Even though they're sitting 16th, they are seriously better than a 16th team. I have to mention, you cannot go past John Newcombe. He had 40 disposals at 85% disposal efficiency. And to top the cherry on top, he kicked a goal. He single-handedly won that game. They won by 3 points in Launceston. Just makes it tricky for the Dogs now. They're sitting on 8th by percentage. Giants are on 44 points. Essendon are on 44 points. And the Dogs are on 44 points. It's going to be, obviously, as I said earlier, interesting how the finals will shape. But Western Bulldogs, they are quite inconsistent. Losing to Hawthorn, it certainly wouldn't tickle their fancy. But we now go to St Kilda and Richmond. Jack Sinclair, he's gathering the share, and as always, he's averaging 28.5 disposals for the year. He just continues to impress. And not only that, Max King, he's back. He's bagged 6 goals. And, I mean, Noah Bolter, he could not stop the bloke. Noah Bolter, he's been given a lot of praise this year. But Max King, he was all over him like a cheap suit. And the Tigers, throughout the whole game, their pressure was lacking. They only had 20 tackles for the first half. And their Marvel woes continue. They show up to Marvel and they just... Well, I don't even know if they do show up to Marvel. They rock up and just don't play. Even Dimmer in 2021, he explained that, they hate playing at Marvel, and now with McQualter in, they still can't. So I don't know if it's clearly not a psychological thing. It is just, they just cannot play at Marvel Stadium. They really have to turn that around. The Saints, they're sitting comfortable now after that win. 6th game, clear. Although they do have a rough last 2 games, Geelong at Marvel and then Brisbane at the Gabba. So I guess it's still in the air whether they make the finals or not. No one can really tell at this point. I want to go to this game. So the last game of the round, Port Adelaide and the Giants. Port Adelaide comfortably, easily dismantling the Giants by 51 points. I mean, everyone knows this now, but the Port Adelaide, the club, they just have so many youngsters really impressing. So Zach Butters again, 34 disposals. Connor Rozee, 29. Jason Horne-Francis, 27 disposals and 3 goals. He was just phenomenal that game. The only thing disappointing him and his fans is that he's still wearing a North Melbourne mouthguard. So he's really got to change that, or else he'll probably get bullied for the rest of the season. Yeah, so it was a good win for Port Adelaide, and obviously it's them and Collingwood and Carlton that are really showing it to other clubs. They're sitting third, equal to Brisbane by percentage. So it'll be interesting to see who finishes second and third. There's a lot of different pathways and ways teams can end up in certain positions, and that is just one of them. So that's the wrap-up of round 22. It was filled with demolitions, upsets, goals. It was really good round, that game, and I was lucky to go to the Collingwood and Geelong game. So, it was good to be part of. Now, that's the wrap-up of the round. We now move on to the second topic. So, the race for the finals. This is as close as it gets, right? So, the top 4, you'd imagine, is solidified. So, we've got Collingwood first on 68 points, Brisbane second on 60 by percentage to Port, and then fourth is Melbourne on 56 points. So, you'd imagine those are the 4 teams that will finish top 4, whether Brisbane finish second or third. We'll just have to wait and see. But it's more what happens below the top 4. So Carlton, they're on 50 points, sitting 5th. I think they're solidified in that 5th spot. St Kilda, 48 points, sitting 6th position. Sydney, 46 points. So if they win and Saints lose, they're moving up to 6th. Western Bulldogs are sitting 8th. I don't think they're going to make finals. I honestly don't think they deserve to make finals. They have been too inconsistent throughout the year. I feel like if anyone's going to take their spot, it has to be Geelong. If they win, they will move to the top 8 on 46 points. It just depends on how other teams perform, whether that stays the same or not. But it is a massive, massive last 2 rounds. So the teams I want to focus on are St Kilda, Sydney, the Dogs, Essendon, the Giants, and the Cats. So these are 6 teams that could easily shape the final 8, whether who misses out and who doesn't. So St Kilda, we'll start with them, sitting 6th. They face the Cats, right? So if the Saints lose and the Cats win, the Cats move up to 7th, and then the Saints stay at 6th, right? If the Saints win, they move up to 5th momentarily, depending on how Carlton perform, and the Cats, they are out of the finals. So the Cats lose one more game this year. See you later. Off your trot. You're staying outside the 8, and you can go and get... We move from then. So Sydney now, 46 points they're on. They have Adelaide, the Crows at the Adelaide Oval. Most likely you're going to lose that match. So just say the Crows win. They move up. Potentially, they have the chance to go into the 8 by percentage. They have a healthy percentage of 115.8. So they win. They go up to the top 8. It is such a big round. At the end of the round... So here's the thing. I have a feeling at the end of this round, Carlton are staying 5th. The Saints will probably... I have a feeling they'll lose to the Cats. So the Cats will move into the top 8. And the Saints will stay. So it'll be the Saints 6th, Cats 7th. I don't think the Swans will win. So they'll stay on 46 points. The Crows will move up to 44. So it'll be St Kilda 6th, Cats 7th, Swans 8th. And I feel like the other teams will stay outside the 8. And the last round will be absolutely phenomenal. That is what's going to shape the final 8. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be very, very good game to watch. Good rounds to watch. It's such a confusing way to put it. No one really knows how it's going to pan out. the Crows will probably win, considering they're at the Adelaide Oval. It's just so confusing. Again, no one knows how it's going to play out. It just go with it, and whoever makes the top 8 probably deserves it. But it's just such an incredible way to finish what's been an incredible season. So the race for the finals, that's out the window. And now we go to the experience of being at a game rather than through a screen. So I was lucky enough to go to the Collingwood and Geelong match. It was such a good game to be a part of because there were just 75,000 people at the MCG. I've never been to a bigger football match than that. And I reckon 74,000 of them were Collingwood supporters. I was literally at the Geelong end, and there were Collingwood supporters surrounding me like I was a criminal. It was seriously, it was a good thing to be a part of because it was just really energetic. It was lively. It was just really, really good. Such a good game, a close game, controversial. And it was just like, you feed off the Magpie Army. Like, I don't like Collingwood. I don't like Geelong. But whatever you do, the Magpie Army, it's like they brainwash you. For some reason, it was like an out-of-body experience. I was just getting off my feet, and I was seriously just letting everything out. I hate Collingwood, but somehow I was cheering for them. It's like Satan came over me and bloody just tried to get me to follow some sort of path. I would never go for Collingwood again. It was just, they are weird, the Magpie Army. They are a different breed. But it was so good. Looking back on it, far out, it was a good game to be a part of. It was, just everything about it. The way, so you go to a football match in person and you can analyse and see how teams set up everywhere the whole time. So on a TV, when you watch it on the TV, you only see where the ball is. You don't see the setup behind the ball or in front of the ball. So it was really cool to see that and the structure that Collingwood had. It's just so good. It's certainly worth your money. Cheap tickets, I got them for $31. And far out, I would go again and again and again. And I would just keep going. I would not stop. It was just, I just can't get over how good it was. So for anyone wanting to go to an AFL match, boy, I recommend it more than anything. Literally, I recommend it more than anything. You just see stars of the competition literally in front of your eyes. So good to be a part of. When you see the big men get down and pick the sharing up, the crowd go wild. It's just so good to be a part of. So loud, deafening. And yeah, it's just controlling. You don't go for a team and then you go for a team and far out. Just go. If you want to go to a footy match, just go. That's pretty much all I have to say. So one more topic to get through. It's the tips for next round. Such a big round coming up. Such a big round. And I feel like I've done pretty well with who's going to win. So, Collingwood versus Brisbane, Friday night at Marvel. We know Brisbane can play at Marvel, and we know Collingwood, they can just play football. So I've tipped the Pies by 14 points. It's going to be a big game. It is, again, all of them are big games, but this one's a big game, and I tipped Collingwood by 14 points, and I'll leave it at that. Richmond and North Melbourne. It's at the MCG. If it was at Marvel, I would have been tempted to tip the Roos. But no, I've stuck with Richmond. Obviously, North Melbourne, they're leaving Wardlaw out. And a couple of other players, Zerha as well, just for the end of the season, so they're right for next year. So, no, Richmond will get the job done then. Suns and Carlton at the Gold Coast, Heritage Bank Stadium. Carlton will win that. They'll win 9 in a row, and they are on track to almost win the cup. I can see them winning the cup from here. I feel like they've just done enough. They are threatening teams. They are scary good. And, yeah, I can just visualise them holding up the cup at the end of September. Giants and Essendon. Giants get the job done for me. there'll be a bit of skill involved, but it's more about who's more likely and who's more willing to go the extra mile. Essendon, they leave it to the very last minute. They left it to the very last minute for West Coast. They did the same against North. And I feel like the Giants will roll them in Giant Stadium. They'll be bouncing back from that heavy defeat against Port Adelaide. They're at the home ground with the home fans. The home energy, no, I reckon they'll pick up the 4 points there. Prime time, Saturday night, 7:25 at Marvel. The Cats and the Saints. This is the game that we've been waiting for. This is the game that may shape the 8. Saints and the Cats is going to be a ripper. I tipped the Cats only sheerly because they just have to win. They have to win to make the finals. They certainly want to make the finals. I feel like they'll be coming out raring to play and they will give it everything, their best shot to make sure they get the 4 points. So the Cats over the Saints, I think. Adelaide Oval, Crows versus Swans. The Crows will get the job done. The Adelaide Oval is their fortress. They could beat any team at the Adelaide Oval. They did it twice against Port Adelaide. They just lost to Collingwood. That was when they were in their prime. And they'll just get the job done. So I don't think even if Collingwood versus the Cats, if Collingwood versus the Crows right now at the Adelaide Oval, I feel like the Crows get the job done. They know the Oval like the back of their hand, and yeah, it's as simple as that. The Crows will get the job done against the Swans. We now got a Sunday afternoon. The Dogs and the Eagles. If you tip the Eagles, I think you'll just go to hell because there's no way they're making. They're probably not even going to make it within 30 points at best. So the Dogs will get the job done. It's going to be a handy win for them. If they win, they've got to win by a lot. They cannot afford to let this game slip. The Dogs, they need a percentage boost. They're going to get it by versing West Coast. They have to win by 50 or more. I'm calling it now. They cannot verse a team with the depletion of the Eagles right now and just lose and just win by a handy 20 points. They have to play, and they have to play deadly. Like, they've got to be out there, not to play, but they've got to be out there to kill. Like, they cannot be affording any 20-point, 30-point win. They've got to win by well and truly over 50 points if they want to really be a threat in finals. We go to Melbourne and the Hawks. The Hawks, they've been quite impressive in the past few weeks. But Melbourne, I feel like Melbourne have just starting to drop away. And this is the game they really need to win to solidify their spot in the top 4. They'll be versing the Hawks and they have to get the job done. Clayton Oliver back, Petrarca back. They've got their prime team. They've got Max Scorn, and they've just got to get the job done. They can't afford for a I wouldn't say a subpar. I'd just call Hawks a par team. So you can't afford to have an average team just roll over the top of it. So the D's will get the job done. And lastly, we go to Optus Stadium in Perth, where the Dockers host the Power. Power get the job done for me, only because they're sitting in the top 4 in third position, and they'll just get the 4 points. Obviously, the Dockers, after a 100-point win against West Coast, they'll be confident. They'll be up and about, but I think their confidence will be drowned quite early in the game, where I feel like the Port Adelaide club will be absolutely rolling over the top of them, and they'll just be running around them like witches' hats. So hopefully the Port Adelaide Power, they can get the job done. And again, it's a big game to end the round. So that's that for the tips for round 23. Thank you so much for spending your half an hour with me today to listen to some footy, listen to my blabbery voice. Hope to see you next episode where we'll be covering more topics. And hope to see you enjoying this podcast. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. And hopefully we get you listening again next episode. Thank you so much for your company. And have a good night.